Let me ask you something honestly. When you hear the word prosperity, what comes to mind? A bigger house? A certain number in your bank account? Maybe a nice car, a vacation, the ability to finally say I'm good when someone asks how you're doing financially? Be honest with yourself, because here's what nobody tells you, and this is what took me years to understand. Most people spend their entire lives chasing a version of prosperity that, even if they get it, leaves them empty. I've watched people hit every goal they set, every single one, and they still woke up at 2 a.m. with this low hum of anxiety that they couldn't name, still felt like something was missing, still weren't free. So today I want to challenge something you've believed for a very long time, not to take anything from you, but to give you something far more valuable. Because the real meaning of prosperity? It's not what you think. Here's the thing about the word prosperity. It's been hijacked. Somewhere along the way, it stopped being a description of a full life and became a synonym for financial abundance. And once that happened, millions of people started organizing their entire existence around a number, around an outcome, around something external. Think about the man who works 70-hour weeks because he tells himself, once I make enough, I'll relax. Once I hit that number, I'll be present for my kids. Once the business takes off, I'll finally feel okay. That's not a success story in the making. That's a man running from something. Or the woman who scrolls through Instagram comparing her life to curated highlight reels, quietly concluding that her version of success isn't enough. So she pushes harder, buys more, performs more, dims herself more to fit into a version of prosperity that was never designed for her. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of what we call ambition is actually anxiety in a suit. It looks confident, it sounds disciplined, but underneath it, it's fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being left behind, fear that if you stop running, everything falls apart. And prosperity built on fear is not prosperity, it's a performance. So what is it, really? The word prosperity comes from the Latin prosperare, which means to cause to succeed, to render favorable. But go deeper. In its oldest usage, it wasn't just about acquiring things. It was about alignment, about moving in harmony with something larger than yourself. Think of a tree. A prosperous tree isn't one that's been forced to grow in a specific direction. It's one that's been planted in the right soil, watered properly, given light, and allowed to grow according to its own nature. That tree doesn't hustle. It doesn't compare itself to the tree next to it. It doesn't shrink. It just becomes what it was already designed to be. Now I know that sounds abstract, so let me make it practical. Real prosperity has 3 layers, and they build on each other in a very specific order. The first layer is internal stability. The second is purpose alignment. The third, and only the third, is sustainable material success. Most people skip straight to layer 3, and that's why it never feels like enough. Let me paint you a picture. There's a guy, let's call him David. David grew up watching his father stress about money, watching his mother count coins before the end of the month. And David made a decision early. I will never be that. So David builds. He gets the degree, the job, the promotions. He starts a business. He makes real money, good money, respectable money. But here's what David also does. He can't sleep. His mind races at night. He gets irritated when plans change. He holds tension in his shoulders. He's snapping at people he loves. He's scrolling for distraction. He drinks more wine than he needs to, and every Sunday evening he feels this dread, this quiet weight, even though nothing is technically wrong. That is what happens when you pursue wealth without internal stability. Internal stability means this: your sense of okayness is not held hostage by what's happening outside of you, not your bank balance, not what people think of you, not whether the business is having a good month. Now, this is not about being unbothered. Life will still affect you. You'll still feel things, but there's a difference between being moved by life and being controlled by it. The practical framework here is simple, but most people skip it. Daily internal audit. Every morning, before your phone, before the news, before anyone else's opinion enters your mind, you spend 5 minutes asking yourself 3 questions. 1. What am I actually feeling right now? Not performing, actually feeling. 2. What story am I telling about my life right now? Is it true? 3. What is the one thing today that is actually within my control? That's it. 5 minutes. But done consistently, it is transformative, because what you're building is a relationship with yourself that doesn't depend on external conditions to feel stable. People who have this, you can tell immediately. They move differently, they speak with less noise, they don't need to fill silence, they don't need to convince you of anything. There's a quiet authority to them that money alone cannot buy. That is the beginning of real prosperity. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Purpose is one of the most overused and understood words in our culture. Every self-help book says find your purpose, and most people read that and either feel overwhelmed or feel guilty because they still don't know what theirs is. So let me reframe it for you. Purpose is not a destination, it's a direction. It's the answer to this question: what kind of person are you becoming? And what kind of world does that version of you create? That's it. Let me give you a real-life example. There's a woman, let's call her Sola. Sola is a teacher. Not a famous teacher, not a well-paid teacher by conventional standards. But Sola decided early that her purpose was to be a restorer, to restore dignity and curiosity to children who had been told they weren't smart. She teaches in a way that's slightly unusual. She learns every student's name, and the name of something they love before she teaches them anything academic. She believes that a child who feels seen learns 3 times faster than one who doesn't. Over 14 years, she has shaped hundreds of students. Some of them have gone on to remarkable things. But more importantly, Sola wakes up most mornings wanting to go to work. She has conflict and difficulty like anyone else. But there is a coherence to her life that most people with twice her salary would trade everything for. That coherence, that feeling of this is what I'm here to do, is the second layer of prosperity. And here's the thing. Purpose changes how you pursue money. It changes your relationship with it. Instead of money being the goal, money becomes a resource in service of something bigger, which means you stop making fear-driven financial decisions. You stop undercutting your values for a quick gain. You become selective, and selectivity is actually what increases your market value, not the desperation that comes from needing every opportunity. The practical framework here, the intersection test. Take a piece of paper. Draw 3 overlapping circles. In the first circle, write what you do that makes you forget time. In the second circle, write what the world genuinely needs more of. In the third circle, write what you can be, or become, extraordinarily good at. Where those 3 circles overlap, that is your direction. Not a rigid plan, a direction. Follow it with discipline and patience, and watch how the right opportunities begin to find you. Now, let's talk about money. Because prosperity absolutely includes it. Anyone who tells you that wanting financial abundance is unspiritual has confused struggle with humility. God, or the universe, or wisdom, or whatever framework resonates with you, did not design you to live in lack. But here's the distinction that changes everything. Sustainable wealth is built from the inside out. It comes from solving real problems for real people, not from performing busyness or grinding without strategy. It comes from trusting your direction enough to build slowly and intentionally, not from chasing every trend because you're afraid of missing out. Here's what I've observed about people who build lasting financial prosperity. They are not the loudest people in the room. They are not the most frantic. They are not the ones with the most side hustles. They are the ones who got very clear on one thing they can do better than most. And they served that one thing with consistency and depth for longer than most people are willing to. They built systems. They hired help without ego. They rested without guilt, because they understood that creativity and discernment requires stillness. They were generous, not performatively generous, but genuinely generous, because they understood that generosity is a multiplier. What you release freely tends to return amplified. And critically, they disconnected their identity from their revenue. So when hard months came, they didn't collapse, they problem-solved, because their foundation, that internal stability we talked about, was still intact. That's the third layer. And notice, it's only accessible when the first 2 are in place. So let me show you what this looks like in full. Before, you wake up and your first thought is about what you don't have yet. You're chasing a number that keeps moving. You feel vaguely behind, vaguely anxious, vaguely like you're performing a life instead of living one. After, you wake up and your first orientation is internal. You know who you are. You know what you're building and why you're building it. Money matters to you, practically, meaningfully, but it doesn't define you. So you can pursue it without desperation, which paradoxically makes you more effective at earning it. That shift, from external to internal, from fear to direction, that's the whole game. And it's available to you, right now, regardless of your current circumstances. If something in this landed for you, if any part of what I said named something you've been quietly feeling but couldn't put into words, I want you to do one thing before you close this video. Write down your answer to this question. Am I building from fear or from clarity? Be honest with yourself. That answer will tell you everything. If you want to go deeper, if you're serious about building a life that feels as good on the inside as it might look on the outside, this channel is dedicated to exactly that. We talk about discipline without self-destruction, purpose without pretense, and wealth without the weight. Subscribe if that's the conversation you've been looking for. And if this resonated, share it with one person who needs to hear it. You might not know exactly why they need it, but trust that instinct. See you in the next one.